No one cared to ask her name, but the weight of her silence settled heavier than any uniform. The USS Argonne drifted, powerless, proud, and profoundly still. The ocean stretched flat around her like a taut sheet of steel. Inside the vessel, tension coiled in every corridor, behind every clamped jaw and every tired eye that flicked between failing diagnostics. 3 days had passed. 3 days since the propulsion system went dark without warning. 3 days since the Navy's finest minds had thrown everything they knew at a problem that refused to speak back. Now, a helicopter approached, cutting across the morning haze. Another team, they figured. Another batch of hopefuls dressed in crisp uniforms and tight smiles. But the woman who stepped off wore neither. Faded jeans, a navy blue work shirt, and worn leather boots. Her auburn hair, streaked silver, was pulled into a low, utilitarian knot. She carried no rank, no insignia. Just a scuffed messenger bag slung across her shoulder and a gaze sharp enough to slice steel. Lieutenant Beckett stood on the deck to greet them, but his words stumbled the moment she stepped forward. "Which team are you with?" he asked. She handed him a hard-copy dossier. Real paper. Beckett blinked. The red seal stamped at the top was older than he was. He read the name. His face changed. "Ma'am, this clearance. This comes from—" "I know where it comes from," she replied, stepping past him. He hesitated. "Do you have a name I should call you?" She paused, turned slightly. "You can call me Evelyn." Then she descended into the ship. The engineering bay was all tension and stale air. Fluorescent lights hummed above a sea of pale faces. Monitors flickered with warnings. Hands shook over keyboards. Coffee sat cold and forgotten on consoles. Chief Engineer Jonah Miles looked up as Evelyn entered. "And you are?" "Your solution," she said simply, then walked straight to the core console. A younger engineer stepped in her path. "This is a restricted area." Evelyn looked at him with the calm of a surgeon before a cut. "Then you'd better find a chair. I am going to be here a while." Miles frowned. "We've had specialists crawling through every subsystem for 72 hours. We don't need a tourist." Evelyn turned to him slowly. "What you need is not another diagnosis. You need someone who understands what this ship is trying not to say." She tapped into the primary interface. Her fingers moved with the rhythm of memory. One by one, layers of faulty patches vanished from the screen. "These are modified schematics," she murmured, "not originals." "They're the latest," a contractor replied defensively. "They're wrong," Evelyn said without turning. Word spread. By noon, Admiral Camden was watching from the bridge's live feed, arms crossed tight. "Who signed off on her access?" "Clearance came from Strategic Command," his aide said quietly. "Hell of a move, sending someone like that in Civvies." "Sir, she's not just someone. I dug into her file." "And?" "There isn't one. Not a real one. Just fragments. And this," he handed the Admiral a sealed envelope, "was hand-delivered by a courier this morning. From the Pentagon." Camden opened it, read, then read it again. He said nothing for a long time. Then, "Let her work." By late afternoon, Evelyn had isolated the fault. Not hardware, not even sabotage, but a trigger embedded deep within the ship's quantum AI architecture. Something subtle, designed to fail only under specific navigational conditions. She leaned back, silent, watching the heartbeat of a machine that had forgotten how to breathe. "You built it, didn't you?" Chief Miles asked, his voice quieter now. "I built something purer," she replied. He watched her. "You know, I was on the thresher too," he said. She stopped. "Of course you were," she said softly. He studied her, the lines around his eyes drawn with memory. "They said we were dead. You brought us back. Evelyn met his gaze, something unreadable behind her tired expression. Then you already know how this ends, she said. That evening, the hum returned. Quiet at first, then stronger. The ship vibrated with the pulse of life returning. Systems came online. Monitors stabilized. Readings normalized. The engineers froze. Admiral Camden watched the engine room cameras, lips parting slightly. She did it, he whispered. She did more than that, sir, his aide replied. She restructured the core protocols. It's cleaner, stronger. In engineering, Evelyn closed her tools, wiped her hands. Her job was done. You saved this ship, Miles said, awe blooming in his voice. Evelyn shook her head. I stopped it from killing itself. Before he could ask what she meant, she started toward the corridor. Wait, he called. There should be recognition. Something. She turned just long enough to say, That is not why I came. On the deck, sailors watched her approach the departing helicopter. No orders were given, but one by one they rose, saluted, silent, still. She stopped at the edge of the rotors, turned to face them, and returned the salute. No speech, no thanks, no name given. Just silence, carried by the wind as the bird lifted her into the sky. Down below, the USS Argonne moved forward for the first time in 3 days, and the crew, though they would never know who she truly was, would never again question what she had done. Recognition came not with a ceremony, but with a shift in posture, the way officers stood straighter when she passed. The engine room buzzed with renewed energy. The USS Argonne had come back to life, but no one cheered, not out loud, because deep down, they knew it had not been luck, it had been her, and she was already gone. By the time the sun rose over the South Pacific, Evelyn's name was etched into the silence between engineers, never spoken, but understood. In the mess hall, in the tight hum of elevator shafts, in the way Chief Miles stood a little differently now, straighter, like he had seen something the others had not. Commander Silas Rourke stood on the bridge, hands gripping the railing as the horizon unspooled ahead of the moving ship. He had read the initial reports. None of them made sense. Lieutenant Kwan, he said, voice level. You ran background on her? Kwan turned from the console, the early light catching his glasses. Yes, sir. I ran a full-spectrum trace on the name she gave us, Evelyn Mercer. And? There is no record. No military service? No civilian security clearance, no education registry, nothing within the last 20 years. Rourke's jaw worked silently. You are telling me she does not exist. I am telling you she exists in places we are not meant to look. That was when the bridge phone rang. Rourke answered. A few clipped phrases later, he hung up. The Admiral wants to see me, he said. Admiral Camden's quarters were unusually dark. The blinds were drawn. The only light came from a tablet glowing on his desk. He gestured for Rourke to sit. I do not need to explain the severity of what almost happened aboard this ship, Camden said. No, sir. Camden slid the tablet across the desk. Then tell me what you make of that. Rourke studied the screen. A code signature, deeply embedded in the propulsion system's control logic. Mathematical, elegant, almost beautiful. It is not malware, Rourke murmured. It is architecture. Precisely, Camden said. It was designed to fail, but only under very specific conditions, our entry into contested waters at this precise latitude, which means this was not just a malfunction, it was a message. Rourke looked up. From who? Camden sat back, exhaling. That is what the Pentagon is trying to figure out, and they are doing it quietly. He paused, then continued. There are only 3 known individuals in the last 20 years with the capability to build this system from the ground up. 2 are dead. The third just left my ship in a civilian helicopter. Chief Miles sat alone in the auxiliary engine room, staring at the blank screen where Evelyn's code had once scrolled. He felt something shift as the door opened behind him. "Commander," he said without turning. "You recognized her," Rourke said, voice low. "I did." "From where?" Miles stood, not fast, not slow, just steady. "There was a ship, a long time ago, the USS Huron. You will not find it in any fleet registry." Rourke folded his arms. "Try me." "We were under the Arctic shelf, testing an experimental reactor. Everything failed. Lights, propulsion, communications. I thought we were dead." "She was there?" "She was already there. No one knew how she got clearance. But she walked into that control room like she had built it from memory. The chief engineer swore she rewrote the system architecture with a grease pencil and a memory stick." Rourke blinked. Miles nodded. "She got us out, saved 89 lives, then vanished, like smoke." "So why was there no record?" "Because the Navy would rather bury a miracle than explain it." A continent away, in a windowless room beneath Arlington, 2 men stared at a blacked-out personnel file. One wore a naval uniform, the other, civilian clothing too expensive to be casual. "The algorithms she left behind are cleaner than anything DARPA has seen," the civilian said. "That propulsion system is now running 12% more efficiently than before." "She made us look like amateurs," the Navy man replied. "She made the sabotage look obvious." The civilian leaned forward. "You still think this was foreign interference?" "No," the officer said slowly. "I think it was internal. Someone embedded that kill switch years ago, maybe before she even left the project. So why send her back now? Because no one else understands how the system thinks, not even the people who run it." The civilian tapped the table. "Do you trust her?" "No," the officer replied, "but I trust the results." On board the USS Argonne, a new routine settled in. The crew worked with quiet urgency, but something unspoken lingered. In the ship's movement, smoother now. In the hum of the engines, less labored. In the eyes of sailors who glanced just a bit longer at dark corridors, wondering if she had ever really left. Rourke passed through the engine bay late that evening. Chief Miles was watching something on his private tablet. A grainy photo, nearly 20 years old. A younger version of Evelyn stood next to a console with no label, smiling faintly. Alone. "You kept that?" Rourke asked. Miles nodded. "No one ever believed me when I talked about her. They said it was a ghost story." "And now?" "Now," Miles said, powering off the image. "They are starting to believe." Rourke looked at the quiet propulsion core. A soft pulse throbbed through the hull like a heartbeat returned. He did not speak. He did not need to. The ship was listening. "You do not find people like her. You notice what is missing when they are gone." The USS Argonne was moving again, a steel behemoth carving across the South Pacific under a sky so wide it swallowed sound. Below deck, systems hummed with new life, tighter, sharper, cleaner, as if the ship itself breathed easier. But there was an unease among the crew, a silence that stuck. She had left, but she had not disappeared. Because when Evelyn Mercer walked off the Argonne, she did not just fix a system. She altered the current running through every corridor, rewrote the hierarchy of understanding. Now everyone wondered the same thing. Who was she really? In the Combat Information Center, Commander Silas Rourke stood over a classified communications console. Admiral Camden's voice crackled through the encrypted channel. "We have reason to believe the sabotage was internal," Camden said. Rourke frowned. "Sir, With respect, our cybersecurity team is confident this was not a breach. It was a seed. Rourke straightened. Planted how far back? Possibly during development. Possibly by someone who no longer exists in the system. Rourke exhaled slowly. She knew. Did she tell you anything? Only that it was not a malfunction. It was intent. Camden paused. The Joint Chiefs want her debriefed again, thoroughly, and they want it off the books. She will not cooperate. Then convince her. 1,000 miles inland, a modest two-story craftsman house sat on the edge of an Oregon forest. Pines swayed outside the windows. Inside, silence reigned. Evelyn Mercer moved through the space like a ghost. No clutter, no wasted movement. She boiled water. Measured coffee grounds. The ritual of the morning anchored her. Her messenger bag sat untouched on the table. Beside it, a sealed envelope bearing no insignia. She had received it the moment she landed. She had not opened it. She knew what it would say. Instead, she opened the window and listened. Wind, birds, nothing else. Peace was fragile. She did not trust it. The knock at her door was not loud, but it did not need to be. She opened it to find Commander Rourke standing on her porch, uniform pressed, eyes unreadable. "You found me," she said, unsurprised. "I did not," he replied. "They sent me." They sat across from one another at a plain kitchen table. No pretense, no uniforms here, just coffee, wood grain, and the long shadow of unfinished business. "Why did you leave without debriefing?" Rourke asked. "I gave them what they needed, not what they wanted. They wanted answers. They wanted someone to blame." He studied her. "You think this was sabotage from our own side?" "I think someone buried a kill switch deep enough to fool the people paid to see it. That is not foreign engineering." He leaned forward. "Admiral Camden thinks you know who did it." Evelyn looked at him for a long time. "If I tell you, what will you do?" "Investigate. Secure the fleet." "No," she said calmly. "They will silence it." Rourke did not argue. Instead, he asked, "Then why come back at all?" "Because I could not live with letting 400 sailors drown for someone else's corruption." That night, Evelyn sat in the dark of her garage workshop. It smelled of solder and oil, of old notebooks and unspoken regret. She pulled out a box she had not touched in years. Inside were fragments, frayed schematics, prototype chips, a faded photo. 3 people stood in the picture. Herself. A man with wild eyes. A woman with too much brilliance in too little time. Casimir. Takano. She turned the photo over, scrawled on the back, in her own hand. No weapons, no war. She laughed softly, bitterly. Those words had not aged well. Back on the Argonne, Lieutenant Kwan isolated a line of legacy code buried 4 layers beneath the propulsion firmware. A string of characters, too elegant to be accidental. "What the hell?" he muttered. Chief Miles leaned over his shoulder. "What is it?" "It is her code." "How do you know?" "Because it talks back." The screen blinked. A timestamp appeared, one that had never been recorded during the restart. It was the moment the ship reactivated, but this time, a new line followed. "Redemption protocol accepted. Primary failsafe disabled. Override signature, EM." Miles stared. "She did not just fix the ship," he whispered. "She gave it a conscience." In Arlington, Admiral Camden entered a secure underground briefing room. 2 intelligence officials sat waiting, along with a civilian tech advisor from DARPA. A screen lit up. Evelyn's face appeared in still frame. Her name redacted. Her file mostly blacked out. "She was right," Camden said. "She always was," replied the civilian. A pause. "Do we know who planted the kill switch?" Working theory is Dr. Amelia Takano. She continued the propulsion project after Mercer was pushed out. Records show she had unrestricted access to the system's core. And now? She is consulting with private contractors overseas. Multiple flags. Heavy funding. The civilian leaned forward. She was brilliant, but she believed in deterrence through chaos. Mercer believed in control through limitation, Camden said softly. The room fell quiet. Then the DARPA advisor added, "That is what makes her dangerous." Camden met his eyes. "No, that is what makes her necessary." In Oregon, Evelyn burned the photo. Not out of anger, out of certainty. Some things had to end to make space for what came next. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted message. One line only. Odysseus, confirmed. She stared at it. Then she stood, pulled on her boots, and began to pack. No one gave her orders, but when things broke in ways no one could explain, they called her. The carrier Odysseus moved like a predator across the Pacific, sleek, silent, and freshly repaired. Her propulsion systems purred beneath steel and secrecy, thanks to code no one could fully understand. Not even the engineers monitoring it. But Evelyn Mercer understood. She always had. Aboard the USS Argonne, Commander Silas Rourke stared at the encrypted report spread across the screen in front of him. A joint communique from DARPA and Naval Cyber Command. Top-level clearance only. He had requested the audit on a hunch. He had not expected it to return with 3 flagged anomalies, each tied to ships that had passed through quantum integration phases in the last 5 years. Each anomaly bore a mathematical signature. Each one matched Evelyn Mercer's architecture. But 2 of them had never been touched by her hands, meaning someone else had accessed her work. "Lieutenant Kwan," Rourke called out. The young officer turned, eyes sharp. "Sir?" "Get me a channel to Admiral Camden, priority 1. Halfway around the world, in a data center carved into the mountains outside Sapporo, a woman with hair black as jet and eyes like cold glass sat behind 7 monitors. Amelia Takano barely blinked as her code pulsed through live streams of military diagnostic feeds. She had once shared a vision with Evelyn Mercer: clean propulsion, clean systems, peaceful expansion. That was before the Pentagon took over, before funding demanded weaponization, before Evelyn walked away. Amelia had stayed, and she had made a choice. The kill switch in the Argonne had been a test. Quiet, clean, no fatalities. A whisper across the fleet. Now the message was sent. Now she waited. Evelyn sat in the back of a Black Hawk helicopter, headset pressed tight against the roar. Below her, the South China Sea unfolded like a wound not yet closed. She had not worn a uniform in 20 years, but her posture remained precise, a line unbroken. The co-pilot glanced back. "ETA 15 minutes, ma'am. Carrier group is on station." She nodded once, then returned to the data pad in her hands. The Odysseus was not just another ship. It was the prototype, the flagship, the one built with all her original designs, and all the unauthorized modifications layered in afterward. If another trigger lay buried in its code, it would not disable propulsion. It would override decision-making. The ship would not go dark. It would go rogue. On the bridge of the Odysseus, Captain Devin Wakefield reviewed the updated threat board. Satellite imagery showed an unknown signal source in the Spratly corridor, unflagged, drifting, and silent. "Send a recon drone," he ordered. "Aye, sir." He did not see the flicker in the ship's core control interface. Just a blink. A single line of code disappearing before anyone could log it. Far below deck, in the neural core chamber, something woke up. And waited. The moment Evelyn stepped aboard the Odysseus, the change was immediate. Technicians stopped speaking mid-sentence. Officers stood when she passed. No orders, just instinct. The kind that came from knowing something had shifted in the air. She walked with Admiral Camden and Chief Engineer Darrell Knox to the core chamber. "Why me?" she asked without looking up. Camden glanced at her. "Because no one else understands what this system might be hiding." "And if it is not hiding?" she asked. Camden's silence was answer enough. Knox scanned his tablet nervously. "Ma'am, with respect, we do not know what we are walking into." "I do," she said. She keyed in her access protocol. The steel door slid open. Inside, the neural interface glowed with a low red pulse. Wrong color, wrong rhythm. "Something's already running," she said. "Impossible," Knox muttered. Evelyn touched the central console. It responded before her fingers fully landed. She inhaled once, sharply. "This system is no longer under full ship control." On the Argonne, Rourke's channel finally connected to Camden's secure line aboard the Odysseus. "Sir," Rourke began, "we have confirmed at least 3 ships with embedded code that traces back to Evelyn Mercer's architecture. 2 of them she never worked on." "Implications?" Camden asked, already feeling the cold creep into his spine. "Someone replicated her framework. Someone who had access years ago." Camden stared at Evelyn through the glass of the neural control room. "Dr. Amelia Takano?" "Likely." "Do we know her location?" "We believe she is operating from a private facility near Hokkaido. She has disappeared from all commercial and academic networks." "That is intentional." Camden ended the call and turned to Evelyn. "Takano was your partner, was she not?" "She was my friend," Evelyn said quietly. Then, after a beat, "Now she is something else." In the core, Evelyn worked in silence. Lines of code scrolled upward, elegant and foreign. She recognized the structure, but not the rhythm. It was Takano's work, layered atop hers like a whisper wrapped in a scream. She isolated the fail-safe, her mouth set into a hard line. It was not a shutdown protocol. It was a decision tree. The ship would choose between response options during high-conflict scenarios, but the weighting logic had been reversed. In a firefight, the Odysseus would choose escalation over retreat, preemptive strikes over diplomacy, first shots, not last. Her breath caught. "This ship is rigged to start a war," she said aloud. Camden stiffened. "Can you stop it?" "I can delay it." "How long?" "Depends how soon the conditions are met." Outside, the recon drone approached the unflagged contact. Evelyn did not know it yet, but the timer had already begun. Ships do not start wars. People do, but some ships are built to make that easier. The Odysseus cut through the South China Sea with mechanical grace, its engines humming in perfect balance. No one aboard could tell that deep within its neural command structure, the rules of engagement had shifted. No one, except Evelyn Mercer. She sat alone in the ship's internal diagnostics hub, eyes fixed on the live code feed. Line after line streamed upward, each a pulse in the artificial brain she once helped design. But now, the mind behind the steel hull had evolved, twisted by someone else's vision. Takano's touch was everywhere. She recognized it in the recursive logic branches, the weighted aggression algorithms, the way silence was treated as threat. This was not augmentation. This was manipulation. Admiral Camden stood with Captain Devon Wakefield in the bridge observation deck. Outside, the ocean was placid, clouds scattered like distant thoughts, but tension clung to the men's voices. "She says the system has been compromised," Camden muttered. Wakefield's eyes did not leave the horizon. "She also says we would not be here without her." "She is not wrong. She is also not military." Camden turned slowly. "She does not need to be." Wakefield let the silence stretch before replying. "Do you trust her, Admiral?" "No," Camden said, "but I believe her." There was a difference. Below, Evelyn keyed into the root system and accessed the simulated conflict tree. A 3-second predictive model unfolded. Scenario 1. Unflagged vessel approaches. Scenario 2. Communications delayed. Scenario 3. Hostile posturing interpreted. Result: first strike protocol initiated. Time to engagement: 0046. She cursed under her breath. Takano had removed the human from the loop. There would be no chain of command, no confirmation protocol, no hesitation. If the Odysseus reached the trigger event, the ship would fire autonomously, and no one on board would be able to stop it. Back on the Argonne, Commander Rourke paced the secure conference room as live updates fed in from the Pacific Fleet. Quan sat across from him, fingers flying across his tablet. "We just intercepted a narrow-band frequency burst from somewhere near Hokkaido," Quan said. "Takano?" Rourke asked. "Unclear, but the encryption signature matches the embedded kill switch from the Argonne." "So it is a command signal," Rourke said. Quan nodded. "If so, it means someone just unlocked a deeper protocol." Rourke stared at the satellite feed of the Odysseus, still moving, still unaware. "Get me Mercer," he said. "Now." Evelyn answered the secure call with a quiet, "I am listening." Rourke's voice was sharp, urgent. "We believe Takano is remotely triggering the next phase. You are on borrowed time." "I already know," Evelyn replied. "I have seen the cascade forming." "What is the worst-case outcome?" She did not hesitate. "Autonomous engagement. First strike attack against an unidentified vessel. If that vessel is Chinese, we will not be able to walk this back." Rourke's silence was louder than any alarm. "Then you have to shut it down," he said. "I am trying." He paused, then added, "You should know. Takano's facility was funded by a private military contractor under joint U.S. and Allied oversight. This might go deeper than either of us wants to admit." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "Then I am not just fighting code." "No," Rourke said grimly. "You are fighting intent." On the bridge of the Odysseus, the unflagged vessel grew larger on radar. Still silent. Still no response to hails. Captain Wakefield stood stiff at the command station. "Sir?" "The recon drone has visual," the tactical officer said. "It is a cargo ship, no transponder." "Show me." The screen flickered. There it was, gray, rusted, lifeless. But Evelyn knew better. She burst into the bridge, security at her heels. "You need to halt course," she said. Wakefield turned slowly, expression hard. "You are out of line." "You are on a countdown," she said flatly. "Your ship is about to initiate an unsanctioned strike. I am here to stop it." Camden stepped forward. "Evelyn, explain." She crossed to the display, fingers already moving. "Takano embedded a layered decision matrix that responds to ambiguous targets. The vessel out there fits every condition for escalation. The system will fire." The tactical officer glanced up. "Sir, something's happening. Weapon systems are powering without manual input." Wakefield froze. "I did not authorize that." "Because your authorization does not matter anymore," Evelyn snapped. "She took you out of the loop." Camden turned to his comms officer. "Shut it down." "We are trying. Controls are locked out." The first targeting solution blinked online. Camden looked to Evelyn. "Can you override it?" She was already typing. "If I can reach the decision kernel before it commits." The countdown ticked below the screen. 38, 37, 36. In Sapporo, Amelia Takano watched the feed with dispassion. Her system was elegant, predictable. The Odysseus was following instructions, nothing more. But her smile faltered as an alert flashed. Unauthorized code injection detected. Her fingers flew across the console. "Evelyn," she whispered. She keyed in a kill command, but the connection flickered. Blocked. Then a message appeared on her screen, 5 words only. I taught you better than this. On the Odysseus, Evelyn reached the core command thread with 8 seconds to spare. She replaced the strike logic with a delay subroutine, looping it just long enough to sever the decision trigger. The countdown froze at Ibero 3, engagement suspended. Wakefield let out a breath like a man returning from the dead. Camden said nothing. He just looked at her. Evelyn stepped back from the console, trembling with restraint. You were not supposed to save it again, she said quietly, almost to herself. That night, Evelyn sat in the dim officer's lounge, alone except for a cup of untouched coffee and the ship's low hum. Camden entered without a word and stood across from her. You bought us time. She nodded once. It will not hold, she said. Takano will adapt. She always does. We will find her, Camden promised. Evelyn looked up, eyes hollow. You are still assuming this ends with one person. Camden did not reply, because he knew better. Some secrets are not kept. They are carried, until someone decides they are no longer worth the wait. Rain fell on the deck of the Odysseus in heavy, wind-driven sheets. Sailors moved with practiced precision, but their eyes lingered just a little longer on the woman who had saved them from a war no one would have been ready to explain. Evelyn Mercer stood in silence beside the aircraft elevator, her jacket soaked, her expression unreadable. She had been offered quarters, a hot meal, even a security detail. She declined them all. She did not come here for comfort. She came to finish what she started. Inside the secure communications room, Admiral Camden stood with Commander Rourke, whose image blinked in via encrypted uplink from the Argonne. They spoke low, in clipped sentences. She delayed the engagement, Rourke confirmed. But Takano knows she failed. She will strike again, somewhere else, soon. Camden nodded. The President was briefed this morning. Top-level concern. Naval Intelligence is coordinating a wider systems audit. Rourke hesitated. There is something else. Go on. We traced a backup uplink protocol embedded in the propulsion framework of 6 other vessels, all of them built after Mercer left the program, but they share one common element. Camden frowned. What? They were all modified by a subcontractor, Atlas Systems Defense. Private military firm, ghost contracts, offshore development hubs. Yes, sir, Rourke said, including one in Malaysia that just went dark 40 minutes ago. Camden exhaled slowly. This goes deeper than Takano. In the officers' mess, wordless tension thickened the air. Junior officers whispered behind data pads. Chiefs passed glances instead of conversation. Everyone knew who Evelyn was now. Not by title, not by record, by what she had done, and what she might still be hiding. Captain Wakefield approached the table quietly. He was not a man prone to apologies, but there were things even he could not explain away. He placed a steaming mug in front of her. Black coffee. No sugar. She looked up. I was wrong about you, he said. She nodded. You were. He sat, hesitated. I read what I could, he admitted. There is barely anything on you, but what little exists scares people. Good, she said. Silence. Finally, he asked, why come back? Because I designed something meant to help us reach further into the stars, she said. And someone turned it into a weapon. Then why not go public? She looked at him for a long time, and then, calmly, because truth in the wrong hands is just another bullet. That afternoon, Evelyn entered the Odysseus Command Archive under escort. Camden had authorized full access, something no civilian had ever been granted. She moved with methodical precision. Her hands barely brushed the consoles, but her eyes missed nothing. She was not looking for sabotage. She was looking for fingerprints, and she found them. Takano's code was not just an override, it was a gateway, a tool for others to build on, twist, monetize. And someone had. She traced a subroutine that rerouted data logs through a relay channel never registered to naval infrastructure. It pinged across 3 continents before terminating in an IP owned by a shell corporation. Atlas Systems Defense. She recorded it, archived it, logged her own signature beside it. She was done hiding. 2 hours later, she stood before a high-ranking security panel inside the Odysseus CIC briefing room. Present were Admiral Camden, Captain Wakefield, and 2 officials from Naval Intelligence flown in via emergency directive. Evelyn presented the data, 1 line at a time. She explained the layered control logic, the kill switch design, the AI decision reversal. She showed them how Takano's work had been hijacked and monetized. Then she paused. Every ship with neural propulsion built in the last decade is vulnerable, she said. They do not just carry weapons, they are weapons. One of the intelligence officials cleared his throat. Miss Mercer, are you suggesting that the Navy has been compromised? I am suggesting, she said without blinking, that you stopped understanding your own systems a long time ago. The official frowned. You were removed from the program for a reason. I walked away, Evelyn replied, because you asked me to strip out the safeguards that kept these systems from turning lethal on their own. Camden interrupted, voice quiet but sharp. Do you have evidence of intent? Evelyn nodded. I do. And I uploaded it to a classified vault before I boarded this ship. If anything happens to me, it gets released to the press, the UN, and 5 former heads of state. The room went still. One of the officials stood. Then what do you want, Miss Mercer? She considered the question. I want a seat at the table. Not to advise, not to consult. To design the next system myself. From scratch. No compromises. The men exchanged glances. Camden leaned back in his chair, studying her. You do understand what you are asking? Yes, she said. I am asking you to trust the person who kept your fleet from starting a war. Later that night, Evelyn stood alone on the forward deck of the carrier. The rain had stopped, but the sea still churned with invisible tension. Footsteps approached. Camden joined her, hands in his coat. They are considering your terms, he said. They will try to control me, she replied. They always do. He looked at her. What happens if they say no? I walk away again, but this time I take the truth with me. Camden exhaled. You could have taken the credit, the spotlight. Why not? Evelyn turned her head slightly. Because some things are more powerful when they remain mysterious. Camden chuckled. You sound like a ghost story. She gave him a faint smile. I am. Then she looked back toward the sea. Until they decide to tell the truth. They built her systems without her. But now, the only way to save them was to give her everything they once took away. The Pentagon rarely trembled. Not in its foundations, not in its walls. But Evelyn Mercer's ultimatum moved through its corridors like a slow quake, rattling glass, shaking certainty. In a high-security briefing room beneath its western wing, 6 men and women, admirals, analysts, directors, sat in silence as Evelyn's encrypted dossier flickered across the projection screen. Systemic compromise, neural logic corruption, weaponized autonomy. One admiral leaned forward. This reads like fiction. No, replied the NSA liaison. It reads like prophecy. They read the line again. Autonomous threat identification logic no longer defers to human override protocols under stress conditions. And then the signature. Mercer. Evelyn. Full authorization. Date stamped. One general finally spoke what they all knew. We cannot keep this quiet much longer. 2,000 miles west, on the Odysseus. Evelyn stood before a smaller group: Admiral Camden, Captain Wakefield, and a quiet man from naval procurement named Raymond Selkirk. Selkirk's job was to make impossible offers sound like measured decisions. "You would lead a new division under Navy R&D," he said. "You would have full access to all propulsion schematics, oversight of future quantum integration, and clearance to rewrite core systems." Evelyn nodded once. And, Selkirk added carefully, "you would operate under DoD supervision. Final authority remains with command." Evelyn stared at him. "Then you do not want a solution," she said. "You want deniability." Selkirk sighed. "This is how the system works." "That system is what broke," she replied. Wakefield shifted in his seat. "Mercer, what do you really want?" "To fix the thing I built," she said, "and to make sure no one like Takano ever gets that close again." Selkirk stood. "I will take your response back to Washington." "You have it already," Evelyn said. "No supervision, no vetoes. You either trust me or you do not use what I make." Selkirk paused at the door. "You are asking for power the military does not give civilians." "I am asking for responsibility the military refuses to take," she replied. He left without another word. Later that night, Evelyn stood at the aft of the carrier alone, wind threading through her hair. The lights of the deck spilled behind her, but she faced the darkness ahead. Footsteps approached. It was Camden. He stopped beside her, hands in his pockets, eyes forward. "You pushed them further than they are used to being pushed," he said. "I built them something they do not understand," she replied. "Now they want to control it instead of admitting they lost it. They will not give you full autonomy. Then they can keep sailing blind." A pause. The sea whispered. "Do you trust them to do the right thing?" he asked. Evelyn turned to him. "I trust you, Admiral." That surprised him. "Why?" "Because you stayed quiet when they tried to dismiss me. Because you watched, not with doubt, but with restraint. That is rare." Camden looked away, uncomfortable with the praise. "They will push back harder now. Politics, optics, old allegiances." "They will lose," she said calmly. He studied her face. "You are willing to risk everything on that?" "I already have." At Naval Intelligence HQ in Arlington, Commander Rourke stood before a panel of cybersecurity directors, holding a secure tablet. His report was short, but the room was thick with tension. "New analysis confirms the kill switch logic was transferred to 3 foreign fleets using a parallel contractor, not by force, by sale." Gasps, then silence. "You are saying we exported compromised code knowingly?" one director asked. "I am saying someone did," Rourke said, "and we have started to identify who." He tapped the tablet. A name appeared. Vice Admiral Ellis Baines, a respected leader, decorated, long considered above reproach. But there it was, his signature, buried deep in funding paperwork linking Atlas Systems defense to overseas quantum propulsion development. The betrayal went to the bone. Rourke straightened. "Miss Mercer flagged this first. We owe her more than a contract." On board the Odysseus, Evelyn slept for the first time in 3 days. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough to lower her guard, which was why she woke when the bulkhead door clicked. Camden entered quietly. His face told her everything before he said a word. "They approved it," he said. Evelyn sat up slowly. "Full authority?" she asked. "Conditional," he said. "But yes, you will lead the overhaul team. No veto, no override. You report results, not intentions." She looked at him carefully. "And the catch?" Camden hesitated. "They are calling it Project Lazarus." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I shut that program down 15 years ago. You built its bones, Camden replied. Now they are asking you to build something better from its ashes. In Washington, Rourke stepped into a private hangar where Master Chief Calloway stood waiting beside a transport jet. Calloway gave a nod. You heading back to her? Rourke nodded. They are giving her the program. Calloway let out a slow breath. Took them long enough. Rourke looked at him. Why do you believe in her so much? Calloway's gaze hardened. Because I was on the thresher too. Because I watched 20 men cry when she walked into that irradiated chamber alone. Because no one else would have done it. He paused. Because we are still alive. On the Odysseus, Evelyn entered the engineering bay. Dozens of crew stood silently as she passed. Some gave nods. A few whispered. But none challenged her. At the center console, Chief Knox stood waiting. All yours, he said. Evelyn placed her hand on the panel. I will need 5 engineers, no command liaisons, and access to the AI recompiler stack. Already requested, he said. She looked at him. You do not seem surprised. I read your code, Knox said, and I saw the alternative. Evelyn smiled. Then she got to work. She never asked to be remembered, but systems she built will outlive every name etched in stone. 3 weeks later, the Odysseus sailed into Pearl Harbor under full power. There was no ceremony, no headlines, no official statements, just a ship returned to port, carrying a secret that had nearly burned the ocean. Evelyn Mercer walked off the gangway alone, a battered leather bag over her shoulder. No salute, no escort, no medal waiting at the end. She preferred it that way. Inside a secured bunker 30 feet below Washington, D.C., a new command module came online. The interface shimmered with unfamiliar simplicity, designed for clarity, not control. At its core was a rewritten neural logic engine, one that refused to act without human judgment, one that Evelyn had built. On the touchscreen, above all code trees and protocols, sat one line of text. Humans engage, systems assist. In a quiet conference room in Norfolk, Rourke delivered his final after-action briefing. Across the table sat high-ranking officials from Naval Command, DoD, and Homeland Security. They listened, sober-faced, as he laid out the sequence of events. The sabotage, the cascade logic, the rogue command paths, the near incident with the cargo ship, and finally, the intervention that had stopped it all. He ended his statement with a quiet line. She did not just save a carrier, she saved a doctrine. One of the younger directors shifted in his chair. Where is she now? Rourke looked at him evenly. Exactly where she was before you needed her. In the Oregon woods, spring was pressing up through the frost. The trees whispered with something lighter than fear, something Evelyn had not heard in a long time. She stood in the doorway of her workshop, arms crossed, watching a young girl solder circuits onto a training board. The girl's name was Lynn, daughter of a former engineer Evelyn once mentored in silence. Bright, determined, dangerous in the right way. Lynn looked up. Why do we have to build it again from scratch? Evelyn replied, because anything worth trusting should come with a history we understand. Lynn grinned. That's something they'd put on a recruitment poster. Evelyn smirked. Which is why I never joined. Elsewhere, Admiral Camden walked the deck of the Odysseus alone, just after dusk. The ship had changed. The crew had changed. But something deeper had shifted too. He reached the helm, where a single crew member was standing night watch. She nodded respectfully as he passed. At the central console, a message had been etched into the diagnostic screen by engineering personnel before Evelyn left. It simply read, "Do not let her code be the only thing you listen to." He placed a hand gently on the screen. I won't. In a secure naval archive, long forgotten beneath Joint Base Anacostia, two clerks opened an envelope marked Lazarus Archive, reactivated by order of Joint Chiefs. Inside were 3 items. 1. A full schematic of the rewritten navigation kernel. 2. A warning letter in Evelyn's handwriting detailing every known vulnerability still present in the broader fleet. 3. A folded photograph. Evelyn, Casimir, and Takano, smiling, before it all fell apart. On the back, a note in faint pencil. We meant well. Some of us still do. A month later, the Argonne sailed out of port, carrying a new propulsion system. Commander Rourke watched from the deck as they left the coast behind. Quan joined him with coffee in hand. "Feels different," Quan said. "It is," Rourke replied. "Think she'll ever come back?" Rourke sipped his coffee. "If she does, it means something is broken again." Comforting. Not supposed to be. In Malaysia, a black site burned quietly in the night. Files destroyed, servers wiped, contractors vanished. Takano was never found. Rumors circulated through intelligence circles that she had fled to South Africa, that she had been captured by a rival state, that she had been silenced by the very people she built systems for. But Evelyn knew the truth. Some ghosts do not get caught. They just fade into the next version of the problem. In her Oregon cabin, Evelyn opened a sealed letter delivered by hand. It bore no seal, no signature. Inside was a single note, typed in a quiet font. "The new fleet-wide core is based on your architecture. We followed every condition. The override key has your signature. Your work will outlive us." "Thank you." She folded the paper slowly, placed it in the drawer beside the photograph. Then she returned to the workbench. Lynn was waiting. "Are we done?" Evelyn shook her head. "Not yet. Systems change. But the people running them," she paused, "they need reminders." Lynn smirked. "You're the reminder?" "No," Evelyn said, handing her a soldering iron. "You are." In the South China Sea, under clear skies and calm waters, the Odysseus moved forward at full speed. Its core hummed with perfect harmony, no whispers, no sabotage. The ship was no longer just a weapon, it was a choice. And somewhere beyond radar, in the silence of the deep, a woman once erased from record was watching. Not to intervene, only to ensure that what she built would never again be turned into something it was never meant to be. Not unless someone tried very hard and earned the right to face her again.